Kevin literally cuts the power cord of a computer to reboot it. By Mandarina11. This Kevin was a co-worker of a friend. I didn't witness this thing. Luckily. I would have lost my shit. Kevin has trouble turning off his computer. He clicked on shutdown, the monitor is switched off, no input signal, but the computer light is still on. He pushes the on/off button of the computer that's still lit, but still no signal. My friend says just cut the cable, it should fix it. And points to the socket, meaning pull the plug from the socket. There's a little bit of a nuance that's lost in translation here, but essentially the expression is like the English or English American cut the lights when someone says, turn off the electricity. Because Kevin is a Kevin. He literally cut a cable. With a box cutter. Guess he got a bit carried away, a lot of what he did was cut open boxes and package orders. Not only that, but he cut a cable that was nearest to him. It was the cable of a lamp. Also plugged in the multiple sockets where the computer was plugged in. I never asked for further details about this particular Kevin and the nature of his employment in this particular office. I just didn't think I could handle it. Edit. I forgot to mention a detail. Usually my friend would avoid any interaction with Kevin like the plague, but in this case he just felt compelled to intervene, as Kevin was finger fucking that on/off button for a while and he would continue to do so indefinitely. Also, my title is wrong. He didn't cut the cord of the computer, he cut the power cord of a lamp, trying to fix the computer. My brain is still fighting this mess.
Kevin the cashier, previously the sandwich guy, by always_a_misspell. So this is a continuation of my earlier of Kevin story that can be found here. Now why the manager decided a man who can't cut a sandwich in half the correct way should handle money is beyond me, but this is how it went. His first mishap as cashier happened a few days after the sandwich incident. He came to his shift a half-hour later due to a lack of a ride. Soon as he gets there, the manager notices he has a hole in his pants. Mind you, this wasn't a small hole, it was large enough to fit a baseball through. And it was right at his crotch. And he habitually went commando. He was immediately sent home. About a week later he told us he wanted to quit. When we asked why, he said it's because his drawer was coming up short every shift and the managers were hounding him about it. I asked him, so like a difference under $1 like you're messing up giving change or what? Kevin said that his drawer was exactly $20 short every shift. Bewildered, I said it must be a manager pocketing it or something, that doesn't make much sense. Kevin agreed that there must be a conspiracy going on and he was the fall guy. Not even a full 20 minutes later Kevin says, "You know, I don't know if I should quit though, this job has nice perks, like I can take $20 out of the drawer every shift and no one will ever know it's even missing." It took about 20 minutes to explain that the short drawer issue and his taking money were related. At this point none of us could figure out how he still had his job. A few days later, during a late shift, Kevin has to go to the bathroom. When he gets back to the register, there was an old lady wanting to be served. No one else owned. During the transaction the lady comments on how something smells foul. Kevin stares at the lady and in complete sincerity says, "I just used the bathroom and may not have wiped my ass properly." The lady was very upset. She told his manager but didn't directly quote what Kevin had said, just mentioned he was inappropriate and stormed out. The manager goes to Kevin and asks him why the lady was upset. Now Kevin had the perfect opportunity to cover his ass and lie about the incident, but instead he says, "I told her I didn't wipe my ass properly when she asked what that smell was." He was sent home but not fired. His next shift he was caught giving a public school teacher the cop discount and coffee because he felt they deserved it too. He was immediately fired.
A very close call with my Kevin roommate by Apollo_Lykios. I've lived with this Kevin for over 2 years and she does a lot of things that make me wonder how she's still alive, but this may have been one of the worst. This was last year when we had an extra roommate to help with the rent. This roommate happened to be a recently graduated physicist working for some Department of Defense contractor in the area. Basically the opposite of a Kevin. Quiet, polite, and chock full of common sense. Me and physicist roommate were working quietly in the kitchen when Kevin comes down the stairs. You can tell who is it because she's incredibly loud without trying or even noticing. She announced that she was reheating her leftovers for dinner. I saw Kevin take her food, wrapped in aluminum foil, out of the fridge and put it on the counter. Whatever, right? Wrong. We have a toaster oven and a microwave, sitting right next to each other on the counter. You would think that Kevin would put her leftovers in the toaster oven to heat them up without getting soggy. But no, I look up again just in time to see her put the aluminum foil wrapped leftovers into the microwave. I immediately tell her to stop, and ask her what she's doing. Kevin gives me a look and says she's heating up her leftovers. Physicist roommate has also looked over by this point and is also alarmed. We both tell her that she can't put metal in the microwave, that she would absolutely break the microwave and quite possibly cause some type of electrical fire. Of course, Kevin doesn't believe us, because aluminum foil isn't metal. We look at each other in disbelief, and both go about trying to convince her that aluminum foil is indeed made of metal. Finally, physicist roommate has to pull up a periodic table and explain specifically what happens when you put metal in a microwave. Kevin finally admits defeat, but complains that she'll now have to eat cold food. We ask her why she doesn't just put the leftovers in the toaster oven, and she complains that it takes too long, and so we also suggest that she just unwraps the leftovers and puts them on a microwave-safe plate. Kevin tells us that's too much effort. She eats her leftovers cold, and I contemplate how close we came to burning down our shitty apartment.
My sister, Kevin by Someragingpacifist. My younger sister was in a junior high history class last year and had to do a project. One of the options was to make a cookbook. It had to consist of several recipes of foods from whatever time period they were studying. It was meant to be a somewhat fun project for the end of the year. After the recipes, she needed to include an essay. Now, considering what she should have learned in school up to this point, she would have been very familiar with MLA formatting. She did some solid research and had her sources, and I helped her clean up the citations. So it's the night before it's due. She wants my help cleaning it up. I looked at the pages, pieces cut and glued really neatly into the scrapbook to make a cute little cookbook, and I noticed the words are spaced kind of far apart but the lines are close. So I'm like, what font did you use? This looks weirdly spaced. Oh, I used Times New Roman. But the paper said to double space it. Are you sure it's double spaced? The lines look really close together. And then she went really quiet. I looked at her and asked, Kevin, did you press the space bar twice between every word? Is that not what double spacing is? I thought back to every essay I helped her with and I vividly remember showing her how to change the line spacing on a few occasions. I was amazed that she still didn't know what double spacing was. But then I felt really bad because she started crying and freaking out because she worked really hard cutting and gluing all the papers in and now she had to start all over. I helped her print out corrected copies in minutes and it was resolved. Kevin got a 70 because she chose everything from the wrong time period. But the teacher still passed her for the effort. I bought Kevin ice cream later because she earned it. Being her age and being a Kevin is hard and she still did her best.
Kevin thinks I'm fat by faiora. I wrote about Kevin in training the other day and I realized today that I met another Kevin at the same company. I was, as I mentioned, very pregnant at the time. Like ready to pop any second pregnant. And I was trying to help get this company's everything back on track before I left. One thing I had to keep on top of was payroll, which involved a lot of communication with our field techs so I could make sure they got paid correctly. So I basically knew all of them pretty quickly. Kevin stopped by my desk one day with a couple of the other guys, very male field, with I think one woman amongst over 100 techs. He was saying something nice to me about my work and how he was glad they hired me. The girl before me was, I came to understand, a bit of a grouch. I told him, oh, I'm just here temporarily. I'll have to leave to have a baby pretty soon. Gesturing at my enormous belly. Kevin says, with complete childlike innocence. You're pregnant? I thought you were just fat.
Kevina knows she dialed the right number by Brock 2845. This is a recurring story. It happens many times a week with a few differences in each situation. Our home's phone number is one digit from a local clinic's. We have XI and they have XXXY number, other than that they're exactly the same. Now, normally people will dial our number, realize the mistake and go on to dial the correct one the next time. No. Big deal. It happens so much that it's more of a joke than an annoyance. The thing is, when a Kevina, usually older women, calls, she will not have dialed it wrong and we have it wrong. It's kind of funny and kind of sad at the same time. She dialed the right number and we're wrong, for some reason. It's weird. It just happened today and here is how it went. Hi, I want to check up for my... Sorry to interrupt, you didn't call the clinic, you called the wrong number. I tend to interrupt fast. I don't want to hear private matters like cancer checkups and other kinds of health-related problems. No? I dialed XI and it's the clinic number, you must be mistaken. She hangs the line and calls again. Yeah, I had to schedule an appointment for... Ma'am, you dialed the wrong number. This is a private number, you need to dial. New, huh? I dialed right number, I have written it down on a post-it. What is wrong with you? Actually, the number is XXXY, you dialed XI. That's not what I have here. I need to talk to your boss. I don't have a boss, it's a house's number. So, you're telling me that the radiologist's number is a private number? Nice try. I hung up and she dialed again. I picked up the phone and hung up. She didn't call afterwards. I hope the clinic doesn't fire me. /S.
Kevin nearly turns our apartment into a gas chamber by no more shirts. I'm a community college student in a program for people with mental issues, so while I have seen some Kevins and Kevinas, most of them are excused from me posting about them here. Most being the key word. I knew I would post a story here eventually, but not with this person. For some context, everyone is sharing an apartment with another person. This also means that we both have to clean the apartment. We switch off our cleaning duties each week, so we both have to get the shit into the stick. Anyway, this week was Kevin's turn to clean the kitchen area. These apartments are small, and we were told we had to clean the oven today by our supervisor. Kevin, however, didn't have any materials to clean the oven with. No sponge, no cleaner, nothing. This is the third or fourth time he has forgotten to buy it, after being told multiple times. Our supervisor told him to go buy it, which he did. He came back and cleaned the oven, but didn't wipe down the inside after cleaning, so the chemicals sat in the oven overnight, solidifying into a caked-on layer of toxic paint. I only found out today when I was preheating the oven, and I smelled something very strong. I opened the oven, and was greeted with a foul stench of cleaning chemicals on fire. I've currently shut off the oven and am in the process of airing out the entire apartment. I'll post an update when I confront him about this. Update: so today, me and Kevin had our weekly roommate meeting, and I pointed out how he left the oven unclean. He had no idea what I was talking about until I opened the oven and showed him. He was completely confused as he thought the chemical cleaner would just evaporate out of the oven. I then spent 10 minutes watching him clean the oven out properly. He was still confused about how it didn't evaporate.
Kevina is a vegetarian. By laabeja. Yesterday at work we were having a cookout: hot dogs, potato salad, coleslaw, you know the stuff. I asked Kevina if she would like some hot dogs. She declined, telling me that she was a vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian, I only eat turkey and chicken. I said, but birds are meat. She then told me I'm not a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, I eat chicken and turkey. Thankfully my sense got the better of me and I just said, well, that's interesting, and walked away. There is no way that conversation would have gotten better.
Heinrich's false accusation by CoherentDiscoPanda. This story is from my law professor when I was in uni. He was a defense lawyer way back then and loved telling this story. So there was Kevin. Stole a bike, there were eyewitnesses, and got caught. Before the trial he said he will confess to everything, this way he would only get probation since it was a first offense and not even a high-valued item, which was returned. But few days before the trial he changed his mind, and said he will confess not guilty. Because the eyewitnesses were lying. And it's all false accusation. Apparently a friend told him he could completely get away with it. My prof said there was a very slim chance, but highly unlikely. But Kevin changed his mind so he had to go his way. On the day of trial, they told Kevin, X-person saw him stealing the bike from her window. And this dumbfuck answered with this. Your Honor, that is what I was talking about. False accusation. I looked around before I took the bike and no one was there. The courtroom fell silent. My prof was face-palming and couldn't believe what happened. Even the judge couldn't say a word for a minute. I don't remember what was his sentence in the end, but Kevin was found guilty. My professor said it was the most idiotic way he lost a trial.
Kevin doesn't understand baby boomers by _chist. So I am in a class and we have to all do presentations of generations and Kevin chose baby boomers. Kevin, okay, so this is my presentation on how baby boomers were made so the World War guys came back from war, right everyone? Yep, okay, sure. Kevin, and so when they came home they wanted kids so they started a 2-decade-long orgy, okay? Everyone, internally, what the fuck? Kevin, so they go together and all have an orgy to have a bunch of kids and those kids were called baby boomers. Teacher, okay Kevin, alright, good, can you step out into the hall? So yeah, Kevin actually thought that everyone proceeded to gangbang each other in a 2-decade-long 141 million some sex orgy to have kids. This is far from the weirdest thing he thought. I have some more.
Kevina didn't realize Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol is only one movie. By mariabutterfly. This is the same Kevina that thought she met a 2-year-old, 5 years ago. So I met Kevina while working at the mall. After a shift on a Tuesday she asks if I want to see Mission Impossible, which had just come out. We go to watch it. Then on like Friday we work together again and she asks if I want to watch Ghost Protocol. We just watched it. Kevina, no, we watched Mission Impossible. It's Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol. Kevina, no, we watched Mission Impossible. Let's watch Ghost Protocol. Do you just want to watch it again? Kevina, we haven't watched it yet. Coworker, the full name of the movie is Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol. It's the same movie. Kevina, no it's not. Starts tearing up. We show her on our phones. Kevina just keeps saying no, it's not. You're lying to me.
Kevin is a horrid driver and may have forgotten what the police are for by RoseSylvor. Kevin is my mom. Just gonna call her Kay. So a couple years ago, Kay got a brand new car. Not a problem, she needed it after totaling her last truck. The pole she hit now has a permanent smiley face and dent from the truck. Anyway, her driving increasingly got worse within the span of the next year or so. It got so bad that a friend and I made a game where we count how many times Kay went over the yellow lines illegally, how many times she bumped into other cars while getting in and out of a parking lot, etc. All the fun. One time she even ripped her front bumper off because she ran into one of those steel cables that keep crooked telephone poles stable. Well, I decided to hide her keys. I know, it was a dick move. My stepfather knew that I was going to hide them and even somewhat encouraged it. He also knew that I hid them in his bedroom. He didn't know exactly where in his bedroom though. I made it so that if someone were to actually look for them, they'd be found easily. Just on a dresser, under an empty plastic bag. I figured, if Kay really wanted to go somewhere, she'd either have to find the keys herself or call one of us and ask. Well, that's not at all what happened. When she realized her keys weren't where they usually are, her first thought was to call the police. And what would she have the police do? She had them look for her keys inside of the house. Spoiler alert, the cops didn't find them because they didn't actually look. TLDR, Kevin calls cops to look for her missing car keys within her own house.
Kevina the Nanny uses 4 bottles to feed a baby 2 times by spicy_tuna_code. One of Kevina the Nanny jobs was to feed our baby a bottle, 2 times a day. She was supposed to take breast milk from the refrigerator and measure 3 ounces for each feeding. We noticed after a few days that there were always 4 dirty bottles in the sink. We didn't understand, because she confirmed she was only feeding our baby twice a day at the times we asked. And it wasn't just curiosity, it took some time for us to clean and sterilize the used bottles every evening. After it happened again, we asked her to show us exactly what she was doing. As a bit of backstory, when my wife showed Kevina how to prepare a bottle, she had just pumped some breast milk into a storage bag, and she used the kitchen scale to measure how many ounces she had pumped. Since the markings on the pumping bags aren't very accurate, she first zeroed the scale using an empty pumping bag. So when we asked Kevina to show us how she was preparing a bottle, we watched her take breast milk out of the fridge and then use the kitchen scale to measure 3 ounces. Just like she had seen us do, she used a clean bottle to zero the scale. Then she put the clean bottle in the sink.
Kevina didn't know that dogs existed before the 1800s, but I own 2 cats. This Kevina in my history class is strange. She asked the teacher what people did before dogs existed. Everyone thought she was joking. She said she was serious. Teacher had to carefully explain the history of dogs. After the explanation she said, "What about dolphins and cats?" There are more stories like this, but this is the most recent. Also, after the explanation she asked how cavemen hunted with Pomeranians and poodles.
Kevin is missing the point. By Allalovesmemes. He thought that a gay guy and a gay girl would fall in love with each other because they were both gay.
Kevin went on an overnight hike with no food or water and got lost for 3 days. By Red-Stilleto. At university I met a guy who was a Kevin. He was one of those thinks he's so cool types who insults everyone and thinks he's funny. We were in the same lab, and although it was an individual project I ended up working with him a lot because the time passed faster when he was around. We had to spend 30+ hours of lab time outside of class working on our projects throughout the semester. So Kevin one day tells me the story of how he got lost and how when he got home the police were waiting for him. He decided to go on a hike with a friend on an illegal trail. Not the Kevin moment. The trail was illegal because someone died on it and the parents freaked out and fought until the popular trail was deemed illegal. They brought hammocks so they could spend the night on the mountain, and 1 water bottle, not each just 1, and 1 granola bar, not each just 1. They didn't tell a single person their plan or where they would be. They spend the night, watch the sunrise and have a blast. Kinda hungry though. Well, they look down the mountain and decide to hike down the back way rather than on the trail they came up on. Why? I never quite figured it out. There is no back way, they just took off into the jungle. They hiked all day, and as the sunset came they got worried. They hiked as late as they could using phone flashlights. No service, they weren't that Kevin. Although I wasn't there, so who knows. After becoming exhausted they set up hammocks and spent a second night in the jungle. The next day they kept hiking trying to find a city. They found a river and decided to follow it since it must lead to a beach somewhere. They also drank from it, which is usually a really bad idea, but I understand why they did. The foliage got so bad they started to walk literally in knee-deep water downstream because the banks were too thick to walk on. The sun set again and the other boy told Kevin he wasn't sure he could survive another night, especially wet and cold. They kept going, phones now dead though, that night and into the next morning. The next day they hiked down to a popular waterfall attached to a reserve and historic park where lifeguard yelled at them telling them they weren't allowed up there and they had to come down. So they came down. Did they tell the lifeguard what happened? Nope, they just said sorry and hiked down. Then they worked their way through the park to the entrance and up to the main road. That's where they started to figure out how to get home. No money and no phones, and about 45 minutes drive from home and an hour and a half drive from the hike they started on 3 days prior. They didn't tell anyone they'd been missing or ask for help, they just asked people for spare change until they got enough for a bus fare. Then rode the bus back home. They were surprised to find police cars waiting for them. Their parents had been flown in once they heard their children were missing and no one knew where they had gone. Kevin's dad actually came alone and didn't tell Kevin's mother why he was flying to see his son randomly to spare her the stress of him being missing. They were taken to a hospital where they were checked out. They had issues from starvation and drinking the river water but were fine. Speaking of fine, they were charged a hefty fine for the use of helicopters used to search for them and the manpower of the police investigation. But the good news was Kevin finally got to meet his new roommate who had moved in while he was gone and had no idea what was going on while being questioned by the police about his missing roommate. I'm not gonna say he was proud of his story, but he wasn't ashamed of it. It was kind of like a rite of passage that he'd survived in the wilderness. TLDR, Kevin went hiking without gear, purposefully went the wrong way, got lost. Once he found civilization, didn't tell anyone he needed help and just took the bus home.
A Kevin struggles with the concept of vegetarianism. By Odentay. I work at a fairly well-known sandwich shop in my town. I was working alone on a morning shift on a weekend. Now my store is pretty slow on the weekends, so I wasn't expecting much when in walks a Kevin and his daughter. While he was ordering his food, everything seemed to be fine. Then his daughter asked if we had any vegetarian options and things went downhill fast. I told his daughter that we only had veggie sandwiches as we no longer offered egg salad or veggie patties. She said okay, and then I will never forget what Kevin said next. "Well, you have chicken, don't you?" I thought the question was unrelated and just said yes, several kinds. He then told his daughter to get a chicken sandwich as just veggies wasn't going to fill her up. We both looked at him confused. She told us that she was a vegetarian and couldn't eat meat. Well, chicken isn't meat. Kevin fully believed that birds and fish neither qualified as meat. They were something different. He and his daughter got into a several minutes argument about it before he finally broke down and asked me to tell his daughter that chicken wasn't meat. All I could say is that it was. And the conversation ended there. They paid for their food and left, still grumbling that chicken wasn't meat.
Kevin and her boyfriend decide to pull a fast one on a TV provider by MyUserNameIsRelevent. Edit: I've posted another story from this couple here, so feel free to check that one out as well if you enjoyed this one. Now, both people in this story are Major Kevins, but to keep it simple I'll just refer to them as Kevin and her boyfriend. Kevin and her boyfriend are both in their late 30s. They don't have a lot of money and tend to live paycheck to paycheck. From an outsider's view, you'd assume they're just very unfortunate people. If there's anything I've noticed from my time around them, it's that they love to try to take advantage of people to get stuff for free. Now, I say try because despite their best attempts, it always came back to bite them in the ass, because it turns out they aren't the first Kevin to get tricky. One day, they hear about a special deal going on with a local satellite TV provider. Sign up and they'll give you the first month of TV for free, installation included, with no upfront charges. Kevin and her boyfriend started foaming at the mouth. A free month of TV? For free? That company is full of idiots. How could they not see the obvious mistake they've made? Time to get to work. Kevin and her boyfriend call up the company, and before long they send out their men and install the new dish to deliver hundreds of channels to their waiting eyes. Once settled in, they sit around bragging to anyone who comes by about their masterful plan to get one over on the TV guys. For the next month, they watch hours and hours of TV every day, content with their supreme intelligence. I hear constantly about the free TV they're getting, blissfully unaware of what's next. The month nears its end, and Kevin calls the TV provider with a smug grin on her face, only to discover that you cannot, in fact, cancel a 2-year contract with no repercussions. You read that correctly. They agreed to a 2-year contract before the installation without pausing to think. After having their men come out to take the equipment back, they slap Kevin and her boyfriend with a bill for breaking the contract. And thus, they became the only people I've ever seen pay almost $200 for a little under a month of television. In the end, they blamed the company for everything, failed to learn their lesson, and continue to try similar shenanigans to this day. So, why do they live paycheck to paycheck? Well, the Kevin lifestyle ain't cheap, I can tell you that much.
Kevins come in all sizes by B_I_B. Back when I was in grade school, one of my classmates was a Kevin. Now, you might say that that would be normal for someone in that age, not to be very smart, but what he did clearly shows that he had no comprehension of basic human behavior. He did a lot of small stupid things, but there was one incident that solidified him as a Kevin in my book. But I think, to get a better understanding of the level of Kevin we're dealing with, I should tell you of some minor incidents first. Kevin once ripped the sink off the wall in the school's bathroom. The bathroom was closed for close to 5 months. When they finally opened back up again, they had forgotten to install the doorknob, so we couldn't even enter it for another 3. Not Kevin's fault, probably. Kevin once got stuck in a tree during first period. He couldn't get down again, so the janitor had to get the ladder. He then went to class for the 10 minutes that were remaining. He didn't come back for second period because he had gotten stuck up the same tree again. Apparently it was because it wasn't that high. I bet you I could get down this time. Kevin once got a perfect 0 on a standardized test. I don't know if he knew what he was doing or not, but that was impressive. He once hit another kid with a pair of bongos. During PE, Kevin once refused to do push-ups, so the teacher busted out the good old Geneva Conventions breaking collective punishment. For every time Kevin refused to do push-ups, everyone else had to do them. I don't know if Kevin was just bad at body language or, towards the end, bad at verbal language, but we had to do something like 70 push-ups total, while Kevin got off without breaking a sweat. People were not very fond of him the days after. Kevin and his friends once decided that the best idea would be to play basketball inside of the classroom with a pair of scissors. Don't ask me how, but the Kevin gang managed to completely wreck the classroom, and the scissor ball match only ended when one of the burlier Kevins managed to lodge the scissors so deep within the drywall that they couldn't get it back out. Kevin once tripped the fire alarm 5 times in the span of 2 hours. During camp, the Kevins decided that it would be a genius idea to have a water balloon fight in their room. All their stuff got wet. The next day I saw them gearing up for round 2 before the teachers eventually confiscated the rubber gloves they had been filling with water. Kevin didn't know the alphabet, and he didn't know what sound the letter P made. Kevin prided himself with being the fastest at math. He was not good at it. He could barely multiply. But damn, was he fast. He was so proud when he turned in that paper and got back a big fat 0. He didn't care as long as he turned in that paper, filled with answers that weren't even remotely close, the fastest. All of this might sound like brain farts ranging on a scale from minor to major, but nothing beats the sheer stupidity this Kevin once managed to perform. Now sit back, and behold, sheer stupidity. During English class we had to do a book report. We could choose any book we wanted as long as it was more than 150 pages long. Kevin, may God have mercy on his stupid ass, didn't know what to write about, so he went about the classroom looking over the shoulders of every student for inspiration. Finally he came to a halt and his eyes fell upon my report. I had decided to write about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, seeing as I had just finished it the day prior. Kevin's jaw dropped to the floor. "You can't write about that," he screamed. "That's a movie, that's not a book." I turned to him and explained, "Many movies are based on books. I'm doing the report on the book, not the movie." I gestured to the book that laid upon the table in front of me. Kevin, now more confused than ever, shouted, "No you're not. There is no way you could have read that book that quickly. If you can make a book report on a movie, so can I. I think you can see where this is going." The day had finally come, students lining up, single file, to turn in their book reports. I turned in my report, my eyes searching for Kevin's. I wanted to see how it turned out. I found it quickly. And I couldn't help but laugh. Laugh and be frustrated at Kevin's stupidity. You see, this man whose IQ was clearly lower than his number of chromosomes. This deflated balloon of a child who had stored away knowledge about sports instead of basic logic, this bundle of sheer stupidity had turned in a report on Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. And he hadn't even written a report. All he had turned in was a badly traced picture of the DVD cover. It seemed like he had tried coloring the drawing in with crayons, but stopped when he realized that Spider-Man's eyes are indeed not red, but white. This might not sound that bad, but when you consider that he'd had those 2 weeks to think this through, and that he then decided that this would be the best course of action, infuriates me. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Sorry if I've made any spelling mistakes, English is my second language.
Kevin cheats by Mr_Clipboard1. So my friend in 3rd year, was 15, needed to write a short story opening for English and he was doing it in a different class earlier in the day. I look over and he has a whole story written but he's copying it out of a book. The problem is it's supposed to be a short story and the book is like 300 pages. The second problem is that the book is an autobiography.
Nurses Kevina 1, 2, and 3 are confused. By 7:30 I work in a hospital. I had a patient who had to be on a continuous monitor for their heart rate. We call these telemetry monitors or teleboxes, and they're usually about the size of an old Game Boy. Sometimes patients are on medications where we need more intensive real-time monitoring, say we have larger ICU monitors on stands but still wireless. It's the end of my shift. It's been a hellish night and I've just been informed that every one of my resources is an idiot and doesn't know the policy. The patient needs a ICU monitor. I go find another one and bring it over. Day shift is pissed. They've never had to use the monitor and they don't know how it works. They don't understand why they can't just leave a blood pressure machine at the bedside. I explain that the monitor readings go to the telemetry monitor room where people are paid to watch and interpret the data and also show up on the nurse's station telemonitors so that you can always see what the patient's vital signs are without having to stay at the bedside. The info also crosses over to the chart so you don't have to enter it. We have had wireless teleboxes for at least 15 years. All 3 Keviners demanded to know how this portable monitor's data was going to show up in the monitor room. The monitor made by the same brand as the smaller ones we use, just with a bigger screen and a couple of extra buttons. But how does the info cross over? How can they see it if it's not plugged in? It needs to be plugged in. Why would it show up on the nurse's station screen? How do the monitor techs know to watch it? Eventually I gave up and said magic. That's apparently how you think the other monitors work, right? Got fussed for talking down to them and how it's unfair to expect them to know that just because I work in other units that use them. Like guys, we have 40 patients on this floor with wireless monitoring. We've had wireless monitors since before I started 6 years ago. How do you not understand the concept of attach it to the patient and it communicates with the monitor room/nurse's station over the wireless network?